In life, pride destroys more than poverty ever could. This billionaire learned too late that family is worth more than all the riches in the world. In a glittering world where money speaks louder than truth, where pride often blinds men to what truly matters, one billionaire made a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Adrian Cole had it all: wealth, influence, and a reputation that made him untouchable. But in his hunger for image and new pleasures, he denied the very blood that carried his name. He turned his back on his own child, chasing after a love that promised him eternity but instead delivered betrayal. Years later, when time and fate humbled him, life forced him to face the truth he had buried under pride, the truth that no empire, no woman, and no amount of wealth could ever erase. My friend, before we begin this story, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful stories like this one. Adrian Cole wasn't born into wealth. In fact, his early years were far from glamorous. He grew up in a cramped apartment on the rougher side of Chicago, where his mother worked 2 jobs just to put food on the table. His father had walked out when he was only 6, leaving behind a bitter taste of abandonment. But Adrian carried something that set him apart, a burning ambition. He hated poverty, hated being overlooked, and swore that one day the world would know his name. In college, while other students were chasing parties and casual thrills, Adrian was networking, learning, and drawing blueprints of a future empire. He majored in business and architecture, combining sharp financial instincts with a visionary's eye. By his late 20s, he launched his first real estate venture. Within 10 years, he was building skyscrapers that redefined entire skylines. His name appeared in magazines. Journalists called him the King of Steel and Glass. But success changed him. The humble young man who once dreamed of escaping poverty grew into a man obsessed with power, status, and image. And in that transformation, the people who once mattered most to him began to fade into the background. Among them was his wife, Naomi. Naomi had met Adrian long before the world knew his name. She was a beautiful African woman with warm brown eyes and an even warmer heart. She had believed in him when he was just a struggling dreamer with nothing but an old laptop and a sketchbook full of skyscraper designs. Together, they had a son, Daniel, a bright-eyed boy who inherited Naomi's gentle spirit. For a time, Adrian played the role of loving husband and father well. But the deeper he climbed into the world of wealth, the less he saw of his family. He began to believe that love, loyalty, and fatherhood were secondary to the empire he was building. It happened at a charity gala, an event dripping with champagne, flashing cameras, and men and women in designer suits worth more than most people's yearly salaries. Adrian, dressed in his signature tailored tuxedo, was the star of the evening. Billionaires shook his hand. Politicians whispered in his ear. Cameras flashed in his direction. That's when he saw her, Vanessa. She was breathtaking in a way that seemed calculated. A tall, slender woman with golden hair that shimmered under the chandelier lights, and lips that curved into a smile designed to disarm. She was a model, one of those who graced magazine covers and walked luxury runways. Unlike Naomi, who carried a natural grace, Vanessa carried a sharp kind of beauty. She knew how to stand where the cameras could find her, how to make her laughter sound like music, how to lean in close enough to whisper without ever looking desperate. When she approached Adrian, she didn't gush over his wealth or his empire. Instead, she leaned close and said, "You build cities. That makes you more powerful than kings. But tell me, who builds you?" Her words pierced through the pride Adrian wore like armor. That night, He was hooked. Soon, what started as harmless flirting grew into secret meetings, then late-night phone calls, and eventually an affair. Vanessa made Adrian feel young, alive, adventurous. She whispered promises of a life free from burdens. In her world, there were no crying children, no wife demanding attention, only endless pleasure, youth, and admiration. And Adrian, blinded by her spell, began to see Naomi and Daniel not as family, but as obstacles. The confrontation came one evening in their mansion. Naomi, weary from holding her family together, confronted Adrian. "Adrian, you're changing," she said, her voice trembling. "Daniel needs his father. I need my husband back." But Adrian's heart had turned to stone. "He's not my son," Adrian spat, his words dripping with cruelty. "He looks nothing like me. Maybe you should tell me the truth about where he came from." Naomi staggered back, as if he had physically struck her. "Adrian, how dare you?" she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "You held him in your arms the day he was born. He has your eyes, your stubbornness." But Adrian cut her off, cold and merciless. "Don't play games with me. I've given you everything, and in return, you've given me doubt. If you want to leave, leave. Take your so-called son with you." What Adrian didn't realize was that Daniel, just 8 years old, had been sitting on the staircase, clutching his toy car, listening. The words, "He's not my son," etched themselves into his heart that night. Humiliated, broken, and betrayed, Naomi packed her things. She gathered Daniel's clothes, his schoolbooks, his favorite toy, and left the mansion that had once been her home. She didn't beg Adrian for support. She didn't scream or curse. She walked away with her dignity, determined to raise her son alone. Back in a modest apartment, Naomi worked long hours, cooking, cleaning, and tutoring part-time to make ends meet. But no matter how tired she was, she always found time to tuck Daniel into bed and remind him, "You are loved. You are worthy. And one day, the world will know your name." Meanwhile, Adrian married Vanessa. The press called them a power couple, his wealth and her beauty a match made for magazine covers. But behind closed doors, cracks soon began to form. For a while, Adrian lived in the illusion of perfection. He and Vanessa traveled the world, attended glamorous parties, and posed for endless photo spreads. But wealth, like glass, can shatter. A string of bad investments hit Adrian's empire hard. A global recession, greedy partners, and lawsuits drained his fortune. The empire he had built with such pride began to crumble piece by piece. And Vanessa. She revealed her true colors. "You're not the man I married," she sneered one evening, tossing a diamond bracelet onto the marble floor. "What good is a billionaire who can't even afford me?" Adrian tried to hold on to her, but Vanessa wasn't interested in love, only in luxury. When his fortune slipped, she slipped out the door, leaving him for a younger tech mogul. Alone in his vast but empty mansion, Adrian realized the cruel irony. He had traded love for lust, loyalty for glamour, and in the end, he had nothing. While Adrian's empire collapsed, Daniel was rising. Guided by Naomi's strength and his own determination, Daniel pursued technology. By the age of 20, he had launched his own startup, focusing on AI-driven architecture, software that could design and optimize skyscrapers faster than any human team. Investors flocked to him. Within 5 years, Daniel became a multimillionaire, celebrated as the next visionary. Newspapers that once hailed Adrian now praised Daniel. When Adrian read the headlines, his chest tightened. The boy he had denied, the child he once spat on, was now the man the world admired. Time is the greatest equalizer. Adrian's health began to fail. Stress, sleepless nights, and years of neglect caught up with him. His once commanding frame shrank. His sharp jawline sagged. His booming voice turned into a hoarse whisper. Doctors gave him a grim diagnosis. His body was shutting down. And in that moment, Adrian realized something money couldn't buy. He was alone. Naomi had moved on. Vanessa was gone. And Daniel, the son he denied, had become everything he had once hoped to be. One evening, desperate and humbled, Adrian picked up the phone. His hands shook as he dialed Naomi's number. "Naomi," he said, his voice weak. "I need to see him. Please, let me see Daniel." Naomi hesitated. For years, she had carried the wound of his betrayal. But Daniel, overhearing, placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll meet him," Daniel said quietly. They arranged to meet in a quiet cafe, far from the skyscrapers, far from the flashing lights. When Adrian walked in, Daniel barely recognized him. The man who once towered like a king was now a shadow, frail and tired. "Daniel," Adrian whispered, his eyes brimming with tears. "I was wrong. You are my son. The only son I'll ever have. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I beg for it." Daniel studied his father for a long moment. "You denied me when I needed you most," he said softly. "You denied Mom. You destroyed us with your pride. But Mom, she taught me forgiveness. She taught me that hate makes you smaller." Adrian's tears fell freely. "I can't give you back the years you threw away," Daniel continued. "But I won't let bitterness chain me either." In that moment, Adrian realized that his son was a greater man than he had ever been. In the months that followed, Daniel did not fully reconcile with Adrian, but he didn't abandon him either. He paid for his father's treatments, ensured he had dignity, and visited when he could. Naomi, watching her son's compassion, knew she had raised him well. Adrian died quietly, not as the mighty billionaire the world once worshipped, but as a man who finally faced the truth, that family, not fortune, was the only real legacy. And so ends the story of Adrian Cole, the billionaire who denied his own child, lost everything, and was forced to face the truth at the end of his life. A timeless reminder that pride destroys, but forgiveness heals. My friend, if this story moved you, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more powerful life stories like this one.